So thank you for coming, guys. Today we meet with Daniel Gebler from a company called Picnic. We will do some short introduction about the company and about the Gebler. But before that, I just wanted to say that Daniel is already second time on the CTOcast. Previous time it was like CTOcast. Now it's After Work. It's a little bit different format for us. And last time we met, we've been trying to recall it on February 5th, 2020. So actually it was completely different world back then, and we didn't have any. Yeah, you used to have a little bit of idea that something is coming. So try to imagine yourself there and now, and let's maybe start from what drastically changed with yourself personally and with the company throughout these 3 years of pandemic, of revolutions, of the wars, and earthquakes, and all this craziness which happened during the last 3 years since last time we met with you.
So, first of all, thanks a lot for having me again here. Seems to be that the last one was good enough to invite me again. So, let's say in the last 3 years, obviously a lot of stuff has happened, which means that on the one hand, we have seen at the beginning of COVID, a lot of uncertainty in the market, a lot of changes in the supply chain, a lot of uncertainty, but very quickly, and that was essentially 2 or 3 months into COVID, a massive rise of demand on the supply chain side, basically for food delivery services. So I'm Daniel, CTO of Picnic, an online supermarket where you can order all the products you like at the lowest price, free delivery proposition. And if you think a bit about logistics, you have actually two problems if demand increases. On the one hand, you have a lot of happy customers that want to order with you. So that's great, thumbs up. But on the other hand, somehow the products need to come from somewhere. And in COVID, the following thing has happened. The demand went 2x, 3x, 5x, 10x up, while on the supply chain side, so basically the delivery side, the products that we could deliver to customers went down by 0.5x, 0.3x, 0.2x, 0.1x. So essentially the gap that we had to bridge was there was a 90% inbound decrease. So basically less products available to sell to customers. And there were many more customers that wanted to buy products. So that was a very stressful time. And that is very different for different kind of products. So for instance, for cheese, butter, milk, it worked pretty well. For things like rice and for noodles and for toilet paper, it was absolutely impossible to get it from somewhere. So we got from all around Europe toilet paper. And then if you think about if normally only 1 in 20 orders has actually toilet paper ordered. But if instead of 1 in 20 orders, 1 in 2 orders, sometimes even 70-80% of all orders had toilet paper, then your entire organization and supply chain becomes totally different. So while we had normally a big warehouse where we have all the food items, we now needed a second kind of a tent or a warehouse where we just stored all the kind of the special items like toilet paper that customers also ordered. And what it means personally is actually that on the one hand, it is very intense because you have so many kind of new situations that you need to handle in a very short time. But on the other hand, it is also a defining moment for a tech organization and for a tech team that knows that it is essentially facing a unique situation and that we only can master together. So it was on the one hand challenging, but on the other hand also a kind of a lucky shot for a team that just grew together better in this time.
And I think also one of the big questions back then was like, should we scale? Should we buy more, trucks, delivery trucks? Should we hire more people? Like, do you remember this moment when you've been making these decisions in the company? Like, and what was the decision? And how do you see to this, this decision? How do you perceive it now, 3 years later?
It was a very, very strange situation because there was so much demand. Essentially, you had to decide which kind of additional customers that wanted to shop with you cannot serve, which is a very strange situation, which is on the one hand a very luxury situation, but is actually, it sounds great, but is not. Because just imagine that you have customers that are very loyal to your service, that order every week. And now you have new customers that out of fear go to a physical supermarket would like to shop with you. If you just serve those kind of new customers that are maybe not loyal with you, that just are for a couple of weeks with you, and you're no longer serving the old customers, you have a lose-lose situation. The new customers won't stay with you, the old customers you have lost. So this was a very intense kind of balancing act. But there's also a silver lining. Because, for instance, if nobody's flying any longer, if nobody is any longer driving with a taxi, and that was basically the two major pools where we took new order pickers and drivers from, then you have a lot of kind of a nice pool of new people that can actually deliver groceries to customers. So that was very positive in this time.
I think we will keep getting back to this topic, how this business overall changed after Corona. But before going into that, let's do the introduction round, right? So if you can tell a little bit more about yourself, how you ended up being CTO of Picnic, because I know that you're have quite a big background in the science as well, PhDs, MBAs, and etc. So
it's one PhD and one MBA, but it is.
Maar dat is goed genoeg.
Yeah. So essentially, story is very simple. Born and grown up in Germany, was falling in love very early on. Wanted to always do something in tech. Had quite a bit of time during my studies while I studied computer science, so I did in parallel also an MBA, and have been part of the startup ecosystem for a while. Have been building also a recommendation engine, so which is kind of B2B e-commerce for all kind of different sites. And then at some point, it just became pretty clear that food is a market where e-commerce is still relatively small, but there's an opportunity with the right proposition to make something very meaningful for customers. So that was essentially the starting point for Picnic. Made in between also a PhD in computer science between one of the business and starting of Picnic. And very early on at Picnic, we basically did a couple of customer research, and what we identified are two.
Just to remind, it is 2015, right?
So this is 2015.
Just to set
exactly,
the stage.
To set the stage. So if you go back 2015, customers have been already very comfortable to buy non-food items, so electronics, books, fashion, online. That was already very big, and big means if you look to how many euros are spent online versus offline, then for instance in books and electronics, already more than 50% of everything what was sold online. And for fashion, it was around 20%. But if you look into food, at this time, only around 1 or 2% has been sold online. And then you have two kind of possibilities. You can say, well, this is a very small market and maybe complex, so this is not interesting. Or you can say, well, if only 1 or 2% are online, then there's a 98% opportunity to convince people to go online. And that was the starting point where we tried to look into what is a business model, what is an operating model, what is a technology that can convince customers to actually order groceries online instead of going to a physical supermarket. And that was the point where we started in stealth mode, which means essentially building a startup which has no real name at this point in time, has no brand, but is just trialing a kind of a proposition in May 2015, where we simply tried out, would customers like a proposition where they can order at any point in time food, get it delivered at a lowest price and no delivery proposition. And then we just saw that this is something what customers actually really like, and we can also do this at scale. And then we made our public launch in August 2015 in Amersfort, so not so far from here. And then step by step went to a couple of cities, first in Netherlands, then to Germany, and very recently also in France.
All right. And I remember that when you started in Amersfort, you told that it was almost 50% of households in Amersfort who installed the Picnic application, right?
Exactly. So there are probably two very interesting things about our first city. So first of all, the city has grown so fast that by now it is already more than 50%. So that means if you go to Amersfort, if you talk to two people, then at least one of them will have actually used the Picnic app and order with Picnic. But what is even more interesting is that there's even further growth in such a city that is already very mature or very saturated from an online food perspective. And then all the cities that came afterwards, and that is even more interesting, are actually growing exactly in the same way. So they are not so far like Amersfort, but that is certainly very convincing and very kind of supportive for the proposition that we have.
Let's maybe talk a little bit about the company itself. What kind of structure does it have? So we better understand the complexity of the business, right? Because from the customer side, from the client side, what we see it's a mobile application, literally, right? But behind this mobile application, I believe there is much more happening.
So we started in 2015, actually just to build an app. So there was not much more on the backend side. And building an app, we have used there what is called the Google Sprint methodology. So in essence, you identify a customer need on Monday, then you build a prototype on Tuesday. You're essentially building it up to in a way that you can test it on Wednesday, and Thursday you have customer research, and on Friday you define basically what you will build in next week. And we have done this around 100 times. That is essentially how we built the first version of the Picnic app. But by now, if you look to Picnic, then the team that is building the app is probably less than 10%, because there's much, much more that we need to also do. So there is a team that is building an app to buy the products, to forecast products, to organize distribution centers, fulfillment centers, last mile planning, the app that drivers are using, customer service, and another kind of 30 or 40 different type of apps that are necessary in order to build an entire farm to fork platform. And farm to fork means the entire process from harvesting a product up to the doorstep of a customer, we want to own, and we will own basically with the technology that we are building.
Okay, and let's maybe dive a little bit in the fulfillment centers, right? I know that it's some special baking up there now. That's more robotized, more automated center. I've seen part 1 article. I didn't see part 2 yet about the story. But where you can subscribe to follow Daniel the LinkedIn. Very many interesting materials coming there about the company, right? So can you tell about the fulfillment center?
So fulfillment centers like what is called the dark store. It's a little bit like a supermarket with a lot of aisles. And in a normal kind of a manually operated fulfillment center, what you do is you are an order picker. You get, in old fulfillment centers, you get the sheet of paper. In new ones, you get an app where you see for customer X, I need to buy products 1, 2, 3. So there's bananas, cheese, and cucumbers. And then you go through the aisles, you pick those products for the customers, and then when you have picked all the products for customers, you basically ship them in a truck to the customers. So that is how it works. However, that is very inefficient, because what it means is that as an order picker, you are easily going something like 20, 30, 40. We have on a daily, if you have your step counter, you easily take on a day 20, 30, 40,000 steps per day. So this is really very heavy work. But it's actually very inefficient, because you as an order picker go to the product. Would it not be much cooler if there's a robot that brings a product from a storage location to you? And this is exactly what we have built in our first automated fulfillment center that we launched last year, where you as an order picker have actually just a very simple task. Products are coming by robots from left and right, and you are just putting those kind of products in a basket for a customer, and then give the basket to the truck that brings it to the customer. And that is something where we have built the first fulfillment center last year, are now building already generation 2 and 3 that we will launch very soon this year.
I'm just wondering, and probably some people also had this question, if you manage to bring the food by robots to the person who is packing, why you cannot pack it with a robot? Why do you still need the human in this chain?
So at this moment, for some products you can do, but for some not. So if you think a bit about, if you take, for instance, some cheese or some meat, you can do this very well with a robot. There's not much complexity. Chips is already a little bit harder, but you can also do it. But the products that are very complex for a robot are, for instance, avocados and cucumbers and bananas.
It's complex projects. You're not joking now.
I'm absolutely not joking. These are complex products because as a human, it's you have a lot of
Sensors.
You have a lot of sensors and you have a lot of abilities to grab a product in a way that you don't smash it.
You will
but that you
overestimate
grab
some
it,
people. So
but you grab it still in a way that you can move it from point A to point B. That is actually very, very hard for a robot. So there is a category of products, typically food and vegetable type of fresh products, around 10-15% of the assortment, that in at least with today's technology will always be picked manually, because humans are just better than robots in this case. But there is certainly a category of 80-90% that can also be done in a robotized, automated way.
And where do you have these fulfillment centers? It's just in the outskirts of big cities, or how do you?
So at this moment, we have in Netherlands 8 fulfillment centers. One of them is automated. That is in Utrecht. So this is not city center, but it's a little bit on the outskirts of the city. But it's still close enough to our hubs that we simply have very little driving kilometers there.
Yeah, why I'm asking is also, we probably will come to that a little bit later in the discussion. I want to understand how such services changed overall the life in the modern city, but let's come to that later. Let's understand also, okay, so we packed products in the bags, right? Mm-hmm. Even the most complex one, like cucumbers and avocados, right? Mm-hmm. And then you say we're giving it for delivery to trucks. And you guys probably have seen these tiny, nice, cozy looking trucks driving around our cities. Can you tell a little bit about the complexity of this part from the fulfillment center to the door? Not to the fork yet, but to the door.
So these are the kind of very small vehicles that are actually have two very interesting features. Number one, they are pretty narrow. So that means if they are parking in a city like Amsterdam, then they are not blocking the entire street. So this is a big advantage compared to other delivery concepts and companies. And the other advantage is, so let me maybe take a step back. If you are really successful with a delivery concept, you reach very high density in a city. So that means if you're driving to a customer or from a customer 1 to customer 2, then you don't drive very far, which means you don't need a very fast car. You need a smart car, but you don't need a fast car. Which means that our car is very smart in the sense, for instance, how we can unload and load and unload it. The traditional cars, you load from the back and you unload from the back, which is very normal. Most kind of delivery vehicles are organized like this. But you are a couple of seconds faster if you can load and unload from the side. And that is exactly what we have in our vehicle.
So it's like first in, first out. That's what you have with unloading on the side.
No, you basically can pick any type of order. And it is like a big Tetris where you take out the order of a specific customer and you just need to know top left is customer 1 and bottom right is customer 2 and etc.
Can we make it, just let's put it on stack. Don't forget.
Yeah.
What was your PhD about? Just guess for you. I know the answer, right? So just for you to get a little bit background.
Is this a question to the community or? No, actually, my PhD is a complete different. Is a different. Is related to it, but it is about software verification of large distributed
systems,
probabilistic systems, and sounds very complex. But actually, what it is just imagine you're deploying a software which has two or more nodes in Amazon, where you have non-reliable servers, where you have non-reliable network. How do you prove software properties? And software properties means if a calculation is done, so 1 + 1 is 2, how do you prove that it really gives always 2 if you run the software? Obviously, for a simple calculation, it's very easy, but you have then properties like, for instance, if you have a login mechanism that nobody ever can log in a system, whenever you have not used a proper password or whenever you have not access to the recovery password mailbox, etc. So those kind of things I proved, or basically I have done in my PhD. And
Why I asked that, I just wanted to show why the guy who is CTO of such successful company with such energy talking about how you loading and unloading trucks and why it's so important, right? Like when you basically thinking in systems, you try and optimize every element of the system. That's what you're in your nature, starting from.
Very true. But there's one other element. So this is the physical side of such a vehicle. And then there's also a lot of IoT in those kind of cars. So in the cars themselves, we are tracking basically every 10 milliseconds, not only the actual position of the car, but also how fast is it driving, how fast are we accelerating, and all kind of other factors. And the reason why we are using it is, on the one hand, for predictive maintenance. So we don't want to be surprised by any form of maintenance or that something breaks, but we always want to make a couple of hours or days before maintenance is required, already make a predictive maintenance, number one. Number two, you can actually learn a lot about the safety of your fleet and of your drivers when you're starting to track how the cars are used. So for instance, we have collected a lot of data about streets where we know that specific turns and specific kind of roads are just safer or not safe when you're driving there with 50 or 60 or 30 kilometers per hour. And that is something, is a data set that we actually also plan to make a public, because it's not only interesting for a delivery service like Picinc, but essentially for all delivery services up to also public transport, etc.
It's also a topic in itself to discuss the culture of the company and the relationship to open source and how you share different stuff with the community. So let's maybe take it closer to the end. So these highly tech, very smart, but at the same time cozy, nice vehicles running around the city. How do you optimize the routes? Against what? Like, what is that? Is it time? Is it safety? Is it avoiding or creating congestions on the roads, right? How do you optimize the routes? So how many trucks do you have?
So we have currently 3,500 trucks. So in Netherlands, we have around
3,500.
3,500. Yeah.
Wow.
We have around 2,000 here in Netherlands, around 1,300 in Germany, around 200 in France. And we are certainly not optimizing for safety, because optimizing for safety would mean that you're making a trade-off decision between safety and something else. Safety is an absolutely must-have and a given for everything what we do. So that means any route that cannot be driven in a safe way, we would not accept in any form. So therefore,
even if it's short and brings you better KPIs on time.
Certainly not. Cannot be. And the reason for this is also very simple. So we are driving in customer neighborhoods. So these are actually so close to customers. There's always kids on the street. So there's no ways that we can accept in any form unsafe driving. But that's only the starting point. The second one is the problem that we are solving for route optimization, because we are looking for an efficient route, which means that how can we make sure that we can deliver to as many as possible customers, which means that we have an efficient, short route. Then we are solving a problem that is called VRTWP. Very complex terms, but in essence, it's nothing else than the classical travelman salesman problem applied to a little bit more complex, to a couple of vehicles with capacity constraints and time windows. And in this kind of solution, or in this kind of solution space, we are optimizing not per se, or we are optimizing not per se for the shortest route, but for the shortest route plus the shortest stop times. So we are taking into account, and this is a very important factor, we are realizing that we spend actually more time with customers than actually driving to the next customers. So that means if you're stopping at a customer, you need to find a parking spot, you need to find the door of the customer, you need to ring the bell, the customer needs to come down, then you need to give the groceries, the customer gives you bottles to give back, and then you go back, etc. That actually takes longer than driving to the next customer, which means that you are optimizing in the long term. The entire prediction and the planning is very much focused on how long does it take to actually all those single steps for a customer to actually fulfill. And then you learn that, for instance, if a customer lives on the second floor instead of the first floor, it takes 30 seconds longer than on the second floor instead of the first floor. And if you go actually to a customer and if you can enter the house just on the back door instead of front door, it's another 18 seconds and many, many other factors. And if you put this all together, you get a prediction model that is optimizing or predicting more the stop times of a customer than the actual driving route towards the customer.
Yeah, I remember 3 years ago, you when you've been introducing Picnic to me, right? You said that it's like modern milkman. But if you remember milkman, you need to talk to milkman, right? So how things are going on, how your kids, If you optimize and engage this stop time, you're losing this warm feeling of talking to your milkman.
We are not optimizing it, we are predicting it accurately. And that means also, in order to get this kind of warm feeling from a milkman, that we are planning, for instance, for a first delivery, another 60 seconds. Because we know that if you deliver a first time to a customer, that it will take some time to explain the service, to answer questions from the customer, so there's extra time. We know also that we need to add additional 48 seconds for families instead of single households.
Because if say hello to everybody, a big family?
Depends a bit on the size of the family, but what we know is that typically families, so the kids want to have a picture with the car or the runner, etc. So therefore, we are planning extra time in for those kind of services
but
to our
customers. But
customers.
it's for serious, right? You're doing that, right?
We're doing this very intentional, very intentional.
Amazing. And vehicle itself, it's electric, right? So all vehicles are electric. So I think we should articulate that. It's maybe not obvious for everybody.
So the vehicles themselves are completely electric. We have designed the vehicle from scratch. And what we have built over the last 2-3 years ourselves is also we have solar panels on our fulfillment centers and on the hubs that are actually generating the energy that we are using to charge the vehicles themselves.
Wow. Well, that's. I'm running on the weekends close to your I don't know, is it fulfillment center or your base in Harlem? Mm-hmm. So you see all these tiny trucks packed and parked so tiny to each other, very efficient. So the efficiency just feel that it's in design of the company. So just to give you a little bit of time to make some sips, when I was preparing, I asked ChatGPT, tell me what is good and what is bad about grocery delivery services, because I want to challenge the guest, of course, right? And ChatGPT was he told me she told me, right, that's good, that's bad, and there were like 5 points. Some of them. I will not articulate them. It doesn't make any sense, right? But some of them
would be curious to hear, by the way.
Some of them really interesting. And one of the points was in the first positive moments and in the negative moments as well. And this point is on one side, grocery delivery service and Picnic particularly helping to optimize road traffic, because they're doing that, as you heard, doing that very efficiently, avoiding congestions. So people should not go every day to supermarket by their own car, so they can save time and less cars on the road. This is also electric cars. Not everybody has electric cars who go into the real supermarkets. So less contribution to the carbon. So from that side, it's positive. From another side, same ChatGPT saying me, yes, but there are so many cars and that's why so many vehicles, and that's why I asked. So in Amsterdam, it's 2,000, right?
In Netherlands.
In Netherlands, 2,000 vehicles, which sounds a lot, right? ChatGPT told me, yes, but it also contributes to congestions on the roads. So many delivery cars over there. And it's just Picnic. If you have Albert Heijn cars, if you have some other car guys on the market, it's adding up. They're competing with each other. Not everybody so safe as Picnic maybe, right? And that's a negative side of it. Then there was a question about the also positive side that some people for them it's just difficult go to the supermarket, right? So it's mobility, and for them it's just the solution, right? So otherwise for them it will be difficult to get grocery often. So that's a positive moment. So if I would ask not ChatGPT, but if I text you and ask, can you give me 3 positive and 3 negative? And I understand that the most difficult part is 3 negative. If you can tell about that.
Well, you covered
grocery
already
delivery services, not picnic, but grocery delivery services. Let's make it general.
You mean services or implications on
the modern city life? Let's put it this way, right? Implications on modern, like an impact on modern cities, like positive and negative, having such companies as Picnic.
Now you covered already on the positive side, I think, a few very, very important points. So there's certainly, we are saving massively both food miles, and while we have indeed a fleet of 2,000 cars, we are capturing probably the delivery effort of something like 20, 30, 40,000 cars. So that is definitely in proportion. There is certainly also a massive impact around food waste. So if you imagine that a physical supermarket needs to plan based on 2 factors. Number one is roughly what you may buy, but you as a consumer, especially if you go to one of the bigger supermarkets, you expect always full shelves, which looks nice. And if you look to a supermarket, then usually you see also full shelves.
Unless it's COVID time and toilet paper and everybody hamstering, right? So.
COVID time was a bit special. and you have seen the reaction of people if you don't have full shelves. But all the full shelves that you see now have a downside, because in essence, this is a massive overslotting, or basically overstuffing of the physical supermarkets that leads to massive amount of waste. So in a normal supermarket, you have easily around 20-25% waste.
Oh, and they put with the, how it's called, the term when you should consume, right? They put it up front. But what I usually do, usually checking on the back on the shelf, like, because usually it's fresher there, right? So probably it's not sustainable behavior.
With this kind of consumers, you increase the waste, obviously. But there's a significant higher waste ratio in a physical supermarket than in an online concept. So in an online concept like Picnic, you are in the range below 1% waste, while in a physical supermarket, you are above 10%. So that is certainly a very, very positive impact. And the third one is there's certainly a kind of a service towards consumers that is much, much nicer. I've not heard many people that say, well, I'm looking very much forward to go today to the supermarket. So that is not a common thing. But most people are very excited to have a kind of a delivery guy from Picnic at the door. And on the negative side, so
yes,
there's certainly also downsides. I think one of the important downsides that you mentioned is if you have many kind of delivery companies, then obviously that leads to a disproportionately more traffic in the streets, and certainly also congestion. But the solution to this is also not so hard to imagine, because in essence, you maybe don't need 10, 15, 20 different kind of delivery companies. The last mile can be channeled to 1 or 2 kind of bigger providers, maybe Picnic, maybe somebody else, and then the other companies can maybe use those kind of last miles. And that is just a kind of an idea, and we will see a bit if that materializes at some point. But there are definitely ideas to get also those kind of more negative sides now turned into something more positive.
Like as an example of, we just came up with the idea, if you will share your models on the traffic, if companies will collaborate on that, and that will be some open platform about the traffic and how you optimize the traffic. I don't know if it's possible from commercial perspective to open this information, but this open data platform could be also potentially the solution.
These are all directions where most of the downsides can actually pretty well mitigated. So I feel that this is really kind of in customer value that brings just more to society and more to customers than it actually has as downsides.
So you said that it's difficult to imagine the person who wants to go to the supermarket, but with all honesty, after Corona, I do have a ritual. I started going to supermarket on Sundays, and also I talked to Dennis today when we've been driving here. He told me that his sport, walking to the supermarket and back once a week. That's maybe not usual case, but also a case. So can we just vote here, guys, in this room? Maybe it's, I don't know how representative is that. Can you raise hand if you go to supermarket at least once a week?
We have to do it.
Okay.
So it's roughly half of the room, but maybe let's combine it. So in average, Dutch people go 3.4 times per week to a supermarket, which is more than anybody or anywhere in Europe. So the question is, who of you is using any form of online delivery services, additionally to also the physical? Okay, it's also plus minus roughly half of the room.
What conclusion we can make?
So
it's not a representative audience. That's the first conclusion.
Very likely. Well, you never know. You never know. I think what is very clear is that there are very few customers that are doing only offline and only online. It is pretty much a hybrid thing. And if you're, for instance, this evening, if you go home and if you still need for tomorrow morning some milk because you want to eat some muesli and you don't have now milk at home, then you will obviously go to a physical supermarket. So there is a very good reason to go to a physical supermarket in this case. But if you make your weekly delivery, or if you're looking for a weekly order where you make the very regular stuff, some toothpaste, some toilet paper and whatever kind of stuff, that is not super exciting. And that is kind of a bit more mundane, but these are the items that a service like Picinc can certainly take over.
So do I hear you correctly that you place Picinc in the niche of services for people who do plan like big weekly purchase of grocery? Like, or maybe like more general question, how do you see the ideal or regular normal customer of Picinc? Who is that? Can you paint it?
So what we know is that so there's a wide range of customers, but around 60-70% of customers are actually families. So in the range between 30 to 50 years old that have a busy life and want to simplify the life by getting at least some form of groceries delivered on a regular basis. And that is a pretty common one. But we have obviously also students. We have also very old customers that, by the way, our oldest customer is 97 years old on an iPad, font size 250%. So you have really a very wide range of customers. But the typical customers are busy families that are more in the category of covering 80% of the kind of recurring purchases with Picinc. Mm-hmm. And then a few of the remaining ones you do on maybe on a weekend trip to the market or so. You still buy sometimes some extra purchases.
And that demographics, if we touch another side, like the pattern of the purchase, there is like weekly purchases, something which I need tomorrow, something which I need right now, and where you are in this.
So Picinc is a next day delivery service. So it means you can order today until 10 o'clock and you get it delivered tomorrow. And there, as part of the model, you need to plan a bit. So you need to plan now what you want to have tomorrow.
Which is painful, of course, but not in Netherlands.
Which you need to learn a bit. But in essence, especially for families, that is something they are used to.
Business as usual, yes.
And many of our customers are actually doing weekly purchases with us, which means that every 5 to 9 days.
So if we talk about the then competition, right? So if you want, you can tell names or not, right? But also to understand, do you you do not consider then such services as Cashierless or BlinQueen as your competitor, right? Because they, or do you?
There's certainly a kind of the quick commerce. So for a service like Picnic, there's obviously all kind of different alternatives. You can sit in such a nice restaurant like here, and you can have your dinner here instead of ordering something over Picnic and prepare this at home. And you can certainly also go to a physical supermarket. You can make meal boxes. So there's many variants. The quick commerce players, which were very hot and happening over the last 2 years, are certainly less popular now. You mentioned Gorillas, that is now actually already part of Getir.
Yeah.
And we will see a bit of what will happen in the next months. But there's certainly a kind of a reverse trend of what we have seen over the last year. So that is also, it has been, Getir is probably more a competition to a physical supermarket because
brick and mortars.
Brick and mortar, because the physical supermarket, you have a decision. So you need something in 10 minutes. You go either to a physical supermarket or you let one of the quick commerce players drop by at your home. It's nice for a few times, but
so you say the quick commerce guys, they lost competition to brick and mortars, but you've never been like big competitor with brick and mortars. You're still winning them. Oh no.
So I find it difficult to really comment on the quick commerce players, and if they lost against something, then it's probably against their own cost structure. But the kind of the bigger topic is that physical supermarkets and online propositions are very complementary. That is a big difference compared to other markets. So if you look, for instance, to electronics and books, then the online proposition is so attractive and is on such a high level, let's say a competitive level, that many are just using online. So many are just ordering online electronics or books. They are not going to physical bookstore, while that is for food certainly not the case. So while we are now at a stage of something like 5 or 6% online in food versus 95% offline, we will maybe at some point have 10 or 15 or 20% online, but it will certainly not become easily 80% or more.
Okay, guys, you will have a chance soon to ask your questions. So while you're preparing your questions, recently, a couple of days ago, I read an article on FT, on the Financial Times, about Amazon, particularly about Amazon Fresh, Amazon Go. For you guys here, I think in Netherlands, we definitely don't have it, but in Europe, I'm not sure if Amazon Fresh somewhere.
Amazon Fresh is in UK and in Germany in 3 cities. UK already a bit more.
Okay, so just for you, it's physical stores, but built from the scratch, built and designed by Amazon, right? So with attempt to make them like next generation, like physical bricks and mortar stores. So and CEO of Amazon. Not Jeff Bezos, but there is a new CEO, right, already for some time. He told that they want now, in 2023, we are in February 2023, they want to double bet on the physical stores. Although, like last couple years, they had plans to build, I don't know, like 400 Amazon Fresh stores in States, and they built just a couple dozen. Right, so they basically failed with all these plans. Now it's what he's saying. They see the future. He says that people still want to feel in touch, although they're still selling books online. No problem with that for 20 years, right? Nobody wants to feel in touch, apparently. But with the grocery, he says that it's important for them feel in touch. And when you told in the beginning of our conversation about the difficulty in the fulfillment center for robot to choose, to take avocado, I immediately thought and just connected these two things. Why do I want to go to the physical supermarket? Probably I do not trust that robot or somebody else will pick the best avocado from the shelf. And you know me, I'm the best in picking avocados from the shelf, right?
There's a small nuance to it, by the way. Okay. Amazon has 2 propositions. So Amazon has a Picnic-like delivery. So next day you order online.
It's Amazon Fresh, no?
That is called Amazon Fresh.
Yeah.
But what you're referring to, Amazon has also, they call this technology just self-checkouts. So essentially,
Cashierless.
cashierless stores, and as they want to massively ramp up those stores, that is absolutely true. Where you go in the store, you just check in with your Amazon account, and then you pick something from the shelf locations. You pick it yourself, nothing else, and you go out, and it will be automatically deducted from your Amazon account.
Sounds amazing, or not?
It is certainly a very interesting proposition, and it is links to exactly what we discussed earlier. There is probably 10, 15, 20, 30% of the market that can and wants to plan for a grocery delivery tomorrow or the next day. But you need to have also the possibility, and this is 80% of the market, to shop something in the moment. And what they are actually have there, they have two propositions. They have a proposition, a picnic-like proposition for the next day delivery, and this for the immediate purchases. They have also a proposition where they tackle this 80% of the market that allows them to actually have a cashierless store. So if you go here in Amsterdam or Netherlands in the store, then you have usually self-checkouts, but all kind of other, let's say, technologies. So you have for the shelving, you have something, and many other people. Those kind of Amazon stores have very, very few people. At this point in time, still a few people, but this is more kind of just security guards. But in the future, that will also go very much away.
They also have some kind of smart cars. I never seen them. Did you see them? What is that, like smart cars? I have some fantasy what it could be, right?
Not very far developed. I think the stores themselves are an interesting concept. The cars very early on, and we will see. What is very interesting is that they are also they have invested in a company called Rivian, which is a kind of a big bet on their side that they can build also cars themselves. And we will see a little bit on how this develops. But we know very well, also from our experience, that it's actually very difficult to build a car at scale.
Can imagine.
So good luck, Amazon.
They do have some resources, though, right? So they built a spaceship.
Yes. Well, I'm not sure if it's part of Amazon, but it's part of Jeff's playground.
Yeah, Jeff can do that.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yes.
Yeah. So I hear a little bit skepticism and that, right? From one side, you're saying that it's interesting, but you're quite skeptical. Do I understand correctly that Picnic would not go in this direction, building a new generation, next generation brick and mortar, and why?
To be frank, I cannot really judge, and I don't want to be skeptical about something, kind of a domain that I'm not deeply in. But what I know for sure is that online groceries and online delivery is a very different kind of business model and operating model than running a physical store, even a cashierless physical store. So that means with Amazon having both, they have two very separate, complete separate business lines. It's kind of two separate businesses. And that is something what you obviously can do. I can only have an opinion about the online part, that I understand the physical part, other people need to judge.
Just to close topics on the competition, etc. Whom do you consider your biggest competitor here? For me, I can tell like what I feel. It's Abraham. That's what I feel as a consumer and long-time user of Picnic. By the way, after our previous interview, I don't know if you can tell it online. So I was moved a little bit fast because there was a big waiting list on the Picnic in 2000. What is that? 3 years ago, it was quite difficult to get on the line, right? So I get help with that. So since then, I'm a user of Picnic.
Very good. Very happy to hear. Very happy to hear. So there's obviously other services, but the biggest competition is everybody's learned habit to go to a physical supermarket. So let me explain what I mean by this. If you are in our key customer segment, so a busy family, 30 or 40 years old, then you have been going for 10, 15, 20 years, usually 3 or 4 times per week to a physical supermarket. If you go for 20 years, 3 times per week to a physical supermarket,
you're making me depressed.
Then this is a learned habit that you cannot easily replace, that you cannot easily give up. So the biggest competitor is actually the past of our potential customers that have been shopping physically with a supermarket for a very long time.
But it's very difficult competitor to fight with. Changing habits, it's very difficult.
what it requires is that your proposition needs to be over proportionally better. So being just a little bit better is probably enough
Not
if
enough.
you don't have this history.
Okay.
But is not enough if you need to actually overcome this kind of 20-year learned history to go to a physical supermarket.
Clear, guys. Still preparing your questions, right? I should ask this question, right? All this giga economy story, from one side, brought a lot of excitement around the future, like where we go, modern cities, everything automated. At the same time, during the last few years, we heard a lot of stories from Amazon, from other companies, where guys going on strikes about the conditions in the fulfillment centers, about the conditions for guys who are doing the delivery, that they're unbearable, that it's actually it's a 21st century way of for slavery, right? So I even heard such things. If you read in New Yorker every week, so yeah, what do you think about that? Like, and is it correct perception? And another part of this question, what about Picnic in this area of Picnic? Guys who work in the fulfillment centers, not in the office, very
Sure.
good office, by the way, and the very strong, I think it's one of the strongest engineering company teams, at least in Netherlands, right? So, but that part, who is in fulfillment center?
So I think it's difficult to really comment on the conditions in other fulfillment centers of other delivery companies. But we are certainly aware that this is work that requires a different approach than many other companies have chosen. So for us, that meant, for instance, contrary to what many other companies have been doing, is that we offered our delivery guys and our order pickers actually contracts. So these are not people that come from outside bureaus, so from companies that are like Randstad, but we really offer them actual contracts, and they can work with us and for us for a very long time. So that is a big difference compared to labor conditions in other areas. The other one is also that beside the pure work on for instance, order picking or delivering groceries, we offer also all kind of further educational options. So that means if you join Picnic for whatever kind of reason, or with whatever kind of background in a fulfillment center or in a hub, then you have also the possibility to actually join some courses to educate yourself further and to make the step to either grow further in Picnic. So that would be obviously very nice. But if you want to make a step in Picnic or learn something in Picnic for maybe another opportunity in your career, then it's certainly also perfectly fine.
That's great to hear, actually. So I know a little bit how it's happening in Picnic. That's why I was not very much worried about asking this question. All right, guys. Now to your questions. Okay, so we have already a few ready. Yeah, Dennis, go ahead.
In general, I have a couple of them, but maybe a second one for the first one. Okay, thank you very much for your answers. It sounds really good. But the question is, any kind of sales process is always about service. It means that if you want as a dealer to sell something, it's everything. It's how your people looks like, how your vehicles looks like, how your photos operate, etc. Besides that, you have a big part around the innovation. The question is, what is the most valuable part of the innovations or service?
Okay, so I will just repeat the question because some people online they cannot hear that. So the question is, what the most important part for Picnic, at least for CTO of Picnic, like is it like service part, like customer-faced service part, or the innovation? If it contradicts, maybe it doesn't contradict to each other. Yeah.
This is a kind of a question that often people are asking, for instance, in a road mapping process, should we invest in innovation, or should we in customer service, or in
response type of application,
efficiency or profitability or things like that. But what you realize over time is that things like, for instance, customer service and innovation are two sides of the same coin. So that means you will not have a strong customer service and proposition if you're not continuously innovate. In the same way also, that if you're not running innovation over time, then your customer service proposition will also not evolve. So it is not one or the other. It is certainly always both.
But what is the focus? Like on customer service, and that's why we need innovation, or on innovation, and that's why we have quality.
So the question is, what comes first? Is it first innovation and then customer service, or the other way around? It is very simple. It always starts with the customer. So there is innovation has only meaning if you innovate in the name of customer, if there's a meaning why you do the innovation. So that means it starts with a customer problem, with an operational challenge or whatever, that we are tracing it back to a possible innovation that we do. And that is, for instance, the challenge with all this discussion about ChatGPT, where you have a fantastic innovation, this large language model and generative AI, etc. Cool, very cool to do. But in essence, a lot of discussion works in the following way. You have a cool technology and innovation. Let's find a good application. And there's already some kind of reasonable applications that we see, but it is actually the wrong way around. You should start with a problem that you try to solve, and then by backward reasoning, you should end up that ChatGPT is the right solution to solve it.
It's interesting point of view. Moving to another question. Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi, sorry, my name is Sasha. Thank you for your time. I'm from England, so I'm from a city called Picinc. I don't know if you might know it.
Which one? I'm sorry.
Milton Keynes.
Milton Keynes. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
have this automated delivery service called Starlink. I've used it, Starhub.
Starhub, okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen it. Basically, it's like a little robot that goes to the shop, someone fills up, and then it travels around the city. Our city's built on a grid system, so it's a lot easier to build. But do you guys see yourself moving into that sort of more delivery service in quieter cities?
Yeah, so I can repeat it just to give you some time to think. So the question is that there is a company in UK, right? Starhub? Starlink. Starlink? Like Starlink. Okay. Starship. Okay. Basically, a company which doing grocery delivery services in a fully autonomous, automated way with robots, right? So.
The humans put groceries in the robot.
Okay, so humans in the store, they load grocery into the robot, and robot autonomous. And you say that it does work in the small town, which is like has grid system there, right? And the question is, like, do you think it's a future for, like, globally and maybe specifically?
Because I don't think it would work somewhere like Amsterdam, but maybe in your quieter cities or as you develop that something like
Yeah, but will it work
So
for
this is-
Picnic? Yeah.
So this is kind of an autonomous delivery that is covering not only the last mile, but also the last meter, last yard, etc. The space itself is called curbside robots, where you actually have robots that organize the last meters towards the customer. If it's from a supermarket, from a dark store, or whatever, there are different type of concepts. And quite a few companies have tried this. So this is certainly those type of companies that are providing this pure as technology platform. There's also, for instance, Pizza Hut has tried this in London already with all the ups and downs with those kind of services. What we realized is, while we have a nice app and a lot of automation in fulfillment centers, our consumers actually value the personal touch of delivering groceries at the door, which gives also an opportunity to explain if something didn't go well. Kind of it's a milkman service, so which allows also to explain if something didn't go well, to also build a personal connection and personal touch, etc., which is obviously no longer possible if you have a server, if you completely automate this. So in this sense, at least on the short term, probably not an option for us. But we certainly monitor this very closely because it is certainly a very interesting development.
I mean, they've been using it. I think I've lived in Germany for 5 years and started 3 years before I did, so it's still functional.
certainly. By the way, I think the company itself is originally from some Eastern European country, but very interesting one. Yeah.
Okay, we had one more question over there, right? And then I'll come back here. Yeah.
I was wondering, what are your personal ambitions or the ambitions for Picnic? Because it sounds like there are quite some areas that you're planning on, for example, different companies, supply chain, but also maybe technology and some background in science. So I was just wondering where.
So there are two questions actually, right? So the personal, well, what is your personal ambition? That's I'm very interested in that question. Yeah, and what is the ambition of the Picnic as a company in addition to what you have, like is geographical expansion?
Very good. Let me start with the second one, and to be frank, both are probably very closely interwoven. So the Picnic ambition itself is we are now active in 3 countries. We are pretty. We are pretty far already with our expansion in Netherlands, where we are 75% of the country can already order with us. And we are expanding in Germany, where we're now in one of the Bundesländer, and we are expanding to the rest of Germany. The same also in France. Fun fact, we have, if you look to the reach, that means how many households can order with Picnic. We have just a couple of days ago hit the 10 million mark. So that means more than 10 million households can order with Picnic. So this is a very important milestone. The second kind of ambition is to automate as much as possible from the supply chain. So we do this now for fulfillment centers. Last mile is, for instance, an option. There's also certainly something in the first mile that we can automate. And the third one, and this is mainly about how do we automate as much as possible from the kind of more mundane and the kind of the boring tasks away, that everybody can focus more on the creative tasks. So let me give you an example. If you are a customer service agent, then half of the work is actually very mundane. So there's very, very standard kind of questions, very standard answers, etc. That is stuff that you can very easily, with generative AI, automate. But there are a couple of cases where you need a human that is handling maybe a difficult situation, or maybe a situation where you need some nuances in the answer. Case. And a banana or avocado case in a way that simply no generative AI can ever do. And the goal there is that all the kind of the very mundane, kind of boring stuff should be automated. Everything what requires real human creativity should be left over to humans, should not be automated. So that is probably the third one. And if you link this together a bit to what I do myself, then obviously a lot is in the Picnic context. We have now more than 300 engineers, so this engineering team of around 320, 30, and we will grow to, in the next 2 or 3 years, maybe 500, 600. So that is certainly also a bit kind of a personal ambition to build a team that is probably one of the best kind of engineering teams that is building such a logistical and a food proposition. But also I'm very active in mentoring, coaching, angel investments, basically involved also in a couple of startups that are in the earlier stage, basically the Picnic 2015, but then in other areas where I just love to be a bit involved and help those new entrepreneurs.
Yeah, Daniel, definitely active everywhere, all conferences.
Left and right.
Right, but always interesting. Yeah.
I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
The last one is easy. So let's start with the first one. You spoke about, let's say, approaching new regions, expanding there. Sorry for my ignorance. I haven't used Picnic for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Do you also have any ambitions to go towards, let's say, membership models or change your business model in the Netherlands? Because as I have in my head, it's now focused on you can order with free delivery your groceries. Are you expanding with group orders, let's say memberships or those kind of things too?
Yeah. So just to repeat the question, so if you plan to have any innovation in the business model, like memberships or group ordering, anything like that?
So we have been actually looking in. We have done a little bit of brainstorming around this, and the interesting or the tricky part is how can you keep your very easy to understand and very and very attractive model that we have now, while also providing a kind of a subscription type of model. And that is not easy. So at some point, while looking in a couple of options, we simply shelved it again. The group buying is a very interesting one. It's usually a little bit less common for food, but in non-food, it is huge in, for instance, in the Asian areas. So in Asia, you have a service called Pinduoduo. And what you do there is, it's a very simple thing. So you can buy whatever, kind of maybe a washing...
Avocados.
Usually a little bit of kind of a bigger items. So you buy, for instance, a microwave or a kind of washing machine. And you can get the washing machine for 10% or 15% discount. And what you need to do as a consumer, you need to find 9 other people or 19 others that also buy exactly the same product. Because then the retailer can buy 20 of those somewhere with a discount of 10% and then gives it to you. That works very well for non-food. By the way, only in the Asian. There's all kind of copycats. They have tried it in the Western world. It didn't work so far. But it worked extremely well in China and India.
Yeah, I thought maybe with, let's say, in Amsterdam, we live in an apartment block as well. We're not always at home. Availability of people who are at home should be in those buildings.
Very good. We actually tried also that. So what we tried is, what we thought is, if customers are mainly families with kids, then why not offering a kind of a storage or pickup service in the kindergarten that where you have simply kind of a locker box where you can get your groceries when you pick up your kid. Sounds like a sensible kind
Just
of
complex,
option.
not to forget, if you have couple kids, grocery,
Yes, you need to make
can
it-
forget something.
Yes.
Like what I took
whatever it
milk.
is.
Son, I forgot son.
Whatever it is, I can say it didn't. Customers didn't like it enough. So, but we certainly, and there's many kind of innovations that you can think of. So there's smart fridge, smart trash cans, smart doors that you can directly deliver to your home if you're not at home. So all those kind of concepts are, to be frank, not completely new. So they have existed already easily for 5-10 years. But the challenge is that you need a critical mass of people that have a smart door, a smart trash can, a smart fridge. And that is, at least at this moment in time, just not the case.
Something beyond early adopters, what you mean, right? So for some couple geeky guys, doesn't make sense to make it scale, right?
You have always 1 or 2%, but yeah.
That was the second part of my first question.
Okay.
So you cover. Okay.
I have a question too. So, as you know, I have like a biking startup or facilitate a sort of bike experience on the side, and we had a lot of crazy things with let's say where bikes ended up and what's or not. What was your strangest thing that happened in any delivery, or your biggest escalation where you were like, what happened?
Okay.
A lot of stuff.
Just to repeat
Yeah.
the question.
Oh, yeah.
So, what kind of weird or crazy things you had in the delivery? Any escalation when you got on use last time, right?
There's a lot of stuff that is obviously happening if you are driving every day somewhere between 100 and 200,000 kilometers with 3,000 cars. Things that are happening is that, for instance, we are getting a call from. So there is a couple, elderly couple. The man has a little bit of some form of dementia, left the home, was somewhere around. And she asked us, if you see them, can you bring them home? And we actually found him on the way to the customer and brought them together with the groceries. So that is one of the stories. And there's many of those kind of topics that are just happening if you're every day on the road with thousands of customers.
Yeah, quite a story. Yeah, please.
You mentioned about customer service and innovation because you're dealing a lot with apps, digital platform. How do you tackle feedback and how do you kind of put that into both, like balancing both? Because you mentioned that it's two sides of the same coin. But how do you do that? There could be one, the app crashes or it doesn't work properly, or it works, but then that's not the way what you ordered. And then you have a grumpy customer who is like, hey, this is not what we wanted. So
Yeah.
So just to repeat the question, how does feedback loop works in the company? It's just the example was not only like obvious articulated feedback, but something like which people probably do not say, like app crashes, slow app, and any other stuff. And I know that you're quite sophisticated in that.
So feedback loops are essential to grow and learn as a company. So we have, and that is happening on many different kind of levels. So as the first one is, we have a feedback loop on our assortment. So that means you go to a category. So for instance, the meat category, and then you see all kind of meat, and maybe you're looking for a meat that we don't have. Then you see on the bottom of a category page, a button. In Dutch, it's called vraag het aan. So which means that just ask for it. And then you can ask for this specific item that you would like to have in this category. And if more than 3 people are asking for it, we will start listing it. So that is a typical one. And the same way, also after a delivery, you can rate your delivery, you can rate also your order, and you can also give actually feedback if something in the app, for instance, is not properly working, if you are missing a feature, etc. But this is only, and this is qualitative positive feedback or feedback that is provided. The tricky part is all the feedback that is not provided. Basically, absence of feedback is also some form of feedback. So we are measuring also that. And then this is pure qualitative. The really interesting one from a data science perspective is quantitative feedback loops. And quantitative feedback loops are the measurements that we do on a daily operation, which means, for instance, if we deliver today to your home our groceries, then we measure how long does it take that we drive to your home, to go from a parking spot to the door, how long does it take you to go when we are ringing the bell that you show up at the door, etc. And all those kind of different factors are taken into account by predicting when we are delivering the next time to you. So this is the feedback loop where the prediction for the next delivery to your home will take into account usually the average of the last 3 to 5 deliveries.
But then if there is an actual feedback that is not very pleasant to hear
Sure.
From a customer, how do you, it could be a combination of service as well as the technology that has led to the customer's dissatisfaction. How do you then basically take it inside your company to get things done better, or probably
just like a part of the question, actually, you getting this feedback, how you putting it into this action, basically, right?
So as a customer service system, we are using by now Salesforce. We have used earlier Zendesk. And the most important aspect is first getting all the necessary information on the case. So for instance, if a customer is giving feedback that a product is not in good quality, then we are always asking for a picture of the product. We are always refunding the product. So if you're saying that an avocado is not good enough, then you get an avocado refunded.
And it's important.
But we want to have the picture of the avocado. And the reason why we are asking for the picture is that we can detect from the picture where in the supply chain it went wrong. So is this a problem in the last mile, in the delivery at the door, or in the car itself, or is this a problem in the fulfillment center? You can see this the way how the avocado is damaged. And then obviously there's a customer service interaction with the agent where we simply say, okay, we are refunding this. The next time you will get maybe already an avocado for free, or all kind of stuff to give the customer confidence that the next time we will simply provide a better service.
One more question there. Yes.
Going back to Cashierless and BlinQueen and that kind of stuff, I think these companies did appear quite suddenly all at the same time. And because money they're all competitors next to Ahold, etc. Have they brought any kind of disruption to your business?
Yeah, so the question is about this quick commerce. How do you call these companies
commerce.
like Cashierless or Flink, right? Did they bring any disruption to business like Picnic?
So essentially what happened with all delivery companies that existed at this point in time, everybody reviewed and assessed their business model is this kind of quick commerce also something what they should do? And that is a very healthy process, because this is an innovation where everybody tries to dissect what of this quick commerce can actually be really meaningful and valuable for a customer. So what we know is that delivering in the next 10 minutes is probably something that is just not cost efficiently possible. But delivering at the same day, or allowing customers at the same day to add products to a basket, is something what is getting a little bit closer to a proposition, and is something we certainly also are looking into. So that this is the kind of the innovation that is now happening across the market. On the other one is also that this kind of having an asset-light distribution model, because they don't have big fulfillment centers, they have just this very light last-mile distribution hubs, is something very interesting also for other delivery companies to consider. Because what you saw is not only that they grew in a city very fast, they could also extremely fast expand. Just faster than we can, for instance, as Picnic or Albert Heijn or Jumbo, because we have a much more asset-heavy kind of distribution model. So that is certainly a kind of a nice innovation, and also a trigger to rethink what you do and how you do it. And then there's definitely innovation on both sides happening.
Okay, guys, I think we have very few time left. 2 last questions. Yes, please.
Just a last question about competitors. You were saying you weren't very clear about your direct competitors, but would you say a company like Flaschenpost in Germany is your competitor?
So Flaschenpost, I don't know if everybody heard it. So the question was if the German company Flaschenpost is a competitor. So Flaschenpost is a company in Germany that is delivering actually only drinks. By now, food until I think 3 years ago or so, 2 years ago, it was bought by one of the largest retailers in Germany called the Otto Group. At this point, it was just drinks, now also food. What you see is a very good example that if you're once in a complex category, like for instance delivering drinks, you can also add things like food. But if you have, for instance, non-food, if you're a non-food retailer, if you are used to deliver, for instance, books or electronics, then you will not easily go in a kind of a category like food. Because for food, you need to think about, you have kind of chilled products and frozen products. So just think about pizza, etc. So this is so different than if you just deliver iPhones as electronics. That is not something what you can easily build up. So at this moment, we are not competing with them, because we are simply not at the same geographics. If at some point we are, then we will certainly also have a similar kind of proposition. But in every city where we are operating, there are certainly other online delivery companies. So that is something we are certainly used to.
You don't feel alone. You never walk alone.
Never alone. Never alone.
All right, and last question over there, I think. Yeah, so. So the question is about, I think, more about B2B potentially part. Did you ever consider having B2B part for SMB, for small and medium business?
So the proposition itself has started as B2C, delivering to consumers, and that is very attractive. B2B has kind of 2 interesting aspects. Number one, orders are a little bit bigger. So that's nice. Revenue is a bit higher. But it increases massively the complexity. And the reason for this is, for a consumer, you can deliver in the afternoon and evening. For a business, for restaurants, but also for offices, you need to deliver in the morning or around noontime. And if you want to deliver in the morning, you need to either pick in the night or the night before. So that means you get in a very different type of logistics. Because now if you get your groceries delivered from Picnic in the afternoon, we are picking the groceries in the morning, and we are getting it delivered from a supplier very early in the morning, and during noon time or so, we are picking the groceries. So this entire process is changing, when we're delivering to B2B type of customers. We looked into it, we trialed it for a while, but it's not easy to get B2B and B2C both set up in a kind of efficient way.
Okay, guys, if you still have questions, maybe Daniel will have a couple minutes after this recording if you can ask them. Last question for me about company culture. We talked about that a little bit 3 years ago. How did it change? Are you still working in the office? Are you coming to the office? And like, let's say, how is it different? How do you differently explain why you should work for Picnic as an engineer today compared to what it was 3 years ago? Are you still big in open source?
So I think it was cool 3 years ago, and it's probably even better now to work at Picnic. But we are doing a lot of open source. What we have done is we are now developing most of the software in Picnic with an open source by default model, which means that we have everything ready when we want to open source something, that we can open source it. So this is number one. Number two is we have now a kind of the size where also engineers can pretty freely choose in which areas they can and want to work. So that means if you're more working in more work in consumer related topics, so in the app or customer service, that's one area, or maybe more in supply chain topics or maybe platform topics, that's all possible. And if you look to the type of challenges that we are working on, then most of the kind of engineering or logistical challenges are very similar to what you would do otherwise also in kind of a big tech. And what we see is we are solving big tech problems with a small tech team. And that is essentially very attractive because that gives you a lot of freedom and flexibility, less bureaucracy, but still very interesting challenges to work on.
And depending how small is the team, it gives you also more working hours, maybe. It's too small.
Well, it has different perspectives, but we have a team of a little bit more than 300, and we have a healthy setup.
Okay. So, Daniel, thank you very much for this discussion. Thank you for amazing the application of all services. I really long-term customer, appreciate the service. And thank you for these stories about avocado. Now I can make some shorts for those guys who are subscribing to
Certainly.
to YouTube channel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.